Hey everybody, Norm from Tested here at DesignerCon 2019. And of course, this is Jim Groman. Jim, how you doing?
Doing great, man.
Oh, you had a whole booth here. We bumped into you at New York Comic-Con where I was freaking out. It was my first time meeting you. You brought the King Korpse custom paint for Tenacious Toys. But here you have so much more. This stuff, I follow you on Instagram. It looks gorgeous, but in person, it's truly stunning. Tell me about these two, because these are custom paints just for this show.
They are, yes. I usually try to bring at least like 4, 5, 7 hand-painted of the larger pieces, like King Korpse and the Rotten Rexes. This guy is Diceratops. And I had one King Korpse, and it was the first thing to go. 2 minutes into the show, it was gone. But yeah, it's like these are all hand-painted. I use a dry brush technique. I used to use airbrush, but everybody loves the dry brush. So it's kind of become my signature style, and that's how these were done.
I mean, the dry brushing works so well for your sculpts, because while these are painted vinyl figures, your original sculpts are hand sculpted.
They are.
And so you have a lot of all that texture, which is that's the signature of your work, right? It's the skin, it's all the sinews, the rottenness of it all.
Yes, and I'm very I'm a heavy-handed sculptor, so it's perfect for dry brushing because you have those deep recesses that you put a darker color. Sometimes I'll use a lighter color, and then you go over with it with that dry brush technique, and it just really enhances all that detail. And being the sculptor, that's what I want to do, is I want to bring out that detail.
Something I'm noticing really awesome here is that even on the scales, it's multi-tone.
Yes.
Like, it's not just, and multi, like, reflectivity, like you have a matte and a little bit of shine. It's not just one brown, there's gold in there.
Yeah.
It blends with some nice, like popping, pink, and then you get to the deep reds.
Yes, it is, the actual skin is like, it's a bronze, and then I went back in with a gold for certain scales. It's almost like, I think I told you in our last interview that sometimes I don't know where I'm going with it. I have certain colors I picked, but it's almost like I keep looking at it, and I know when it's done. And I've started to do this little technique where I go in and do these little individual scales with a separate color, and that's become a kind of a new little signature thing I've been doing just to make it look that much more complete, that much more detailed.
And I guess that must be fun for you as you're doing your versions of this, how many of these Rotten Rexes you've done, every time you get to try something new.
Exactly.
And make it fun and interesting for yourself too.
Yes, because the draw is that these are one of a kind, that someone purchases this, there's not another one exists. There's some that might be close, but there is something always that makes it unique under that one design. So
your work is in really high demand, and people, these are very high-end collectibles, but there's a whole range, and of course you as an artist can't be sculpting and painting everything, so
exactly.
I want to talk about some of the other pieces. This is new, I haven't seen this before. You were telling me this is a digital sculpt based on your concept art.
It is.
How did you work with the artist on the paint scheme, on the digital sculpt, so that retains your sensibilities?
It was actually, I was approached by a company in China called Play Toy Hong Kong, and they just wanted to work with me on something. And I had some things on Instagram that I had done some artwork for this thing called War of the Colossal Freaks of Frankenstein's Planet. It was an IP I created, and they loved the designs I had done, so I started to design it with the idea that I was going to do the sculpt, but I got very, very busy actually working on a project with DC Collectibles. Did not want to say no to that project, so I hired a sculptor to work on the War of the Colossal Freaks figure, and it's a gentleman who's on Instagram as Dope Pope, and his name is Joe Lucchese, and he did the sculpt in ZBrush, and I did very detailed. There's a comic up here that it actually has a little storyline. It kind of gives you a little bit of background of the character, but I decided to, in the back portion of the comic, it goes through my entire process of how this is the image that they found online, that it's an image I did probably like 20 years ago.
Wow.
They liked the characters. I did some new versions of it. So this kind of takes you through the concept art, the designs, how the toy would work, all the different parts work together, and a schematic for him to work from, because usually working with a sculptor, you have to make sure they have as much information as they can to know what this guy's looks like, his armpits, his under his feet, all that stuff. So I do drawings that break down the entire piece, front, side, back, overhead view, measurements, how these characters come together, because he also has parts that are interchangeable. I'm gonna try some here, where this claw comes off.
And that's the fun part of designer toys, right? They're made not to just sit on a shelf. They're made to be interacted with. To pose.
Some are and some are not. And my background is I worked for Hasbro for a number of years, and then I worked for almost every major toy company as a freelancer. I still like to play with them. I still like to have some kind of feature that you can customize, and it's never quite looks different on the shelf.
I was really impressed by the fidelity of the sculpt, retaining the signature of your work, all those deep kind of wrinkle lines and crevices in the skin, the cracks are all there. And then the paint finish, even though this is a factory paint, it's gorgeous.
Yes, and I'll have to tell you that whenever we're getting the deco ready for the factory, I will paint one up. They will send me a blank, I will paint it up. That becomes the paint master, what is called the paint master. That goes out to the factory, and then they send it back for my approval. When I got this from the factory, I actually was looking at it, and I go, they sent me back my original that I painted by hand, and then I look closer, I'm going, no, this is a factory paint. So 90% of this has to be hand painted overseas. So it's amazing.
And it's a testament to the partners that you find to work with, because they care about the work just as much as you do. It's not just they just want to put it out there as fast as possible. They're going to put the money in to make sure that every unit is going to be high fidelity and high detail. You know, whether it's something you painted, whether it's something that's very detailed, collectible, or something even with DC, you know, those look so good. We saw them behind the display case at New York, and it's a chance for people to get a piece of the Jim Groman aesthetic.
Yeah, the mass-produced pieces they're a little bit more affordable. These can be very high-end. This is a $1,000 piece right here because production is so expensive. But yeah, it is. It's like, and I've been getting a lot of love about the DC stuff, so I'm very appreciative of being able to work with those guys.
Well, Jim, it's a pleasure to see you here at DesignerCon. Thank you for sharing with us a little bit of a story, and I'm just going to gush over these figures a little bit before we take off.
Yeah.
But it's a pleasure as always.
Very cool. And like I said, I am a fan of the show, so it's so exciting to be able to sit down and talk to you, I have to say.
Great to see you here.
Thank you, Norm.